This accident changed aviation history.
What's that?
We have to get down!
We've lost pressure.
There's not enough oxygen to survive up here.
Pressurized. Declaring an emergency.
Below 243, clear your position.
Pressurized into Maui for landing. Request the equipment.
243, the equipment is on the roll. Plans straight in runway 2, and I'll keep you advised on any wind change.
Around 2 in the afternoon on April 28, 1988, Aloha Airlines Flight 243 makes an emergency landing at Honolulu Airport on Maui.
On the afternoon of April 28, 1988, the aviation industry witnessed one of its most unusual and unprecedented accidents.
I thought we lost the pilot and everything because from my angle I only saw sky.
Then looked to my other side with my right side and no walls. I looked at my feet and I noticed that right next to my feet was just an exposed area and I could see the ocean below me.
I was working in my seat in the back of the Aloha Airlines, and all of a sudden there was this loud noise. I heard an impact, looked up, and I saw that the plane was falling apart up in the front. Thought we were done.
It went poof, a loud noise, and it just, the whole thing come apart. And I personally thought we were all gone.
The aircraft wouldn't have made it. They would have split into two pieces. And it's a miracle.
Pretty much pandemonium, but it looked like the plane was ripping in half.
Last thing the pilot wanted to see, especially with his airplane in the condition it was in, was that he didn't have a nose gear.
This is the tale of Aloha Airlines Flight 243, a flight that defied the odds by soaring through the skies with a gaping hole in its roof half through its journey, miraculously with only one casualty. The Hawaiian sun beat down relentlessly on Hilo International Airport on April 28, 1988. It was an Aloha Friday, the island's signature day of relaxation and joy. Amidst the bustling crowds of tourists and locals, there gathered a group preparing to board Aloha Airlines Flight 243. This flight, a seemingly routine journey from Hilo to Honolulu, promised nothing out of the ordinary. A quick hop aboard the familiar Boeing 737-200 named the Royal Hawaiian. However, fate had other plans in store, and what unfolded would soon become a legendary tale in aviation history.
This is one of the most remarkable flying events in history. No airplane has ever landed with this amount of damage.
Certainly a day people in Hawaii won't ever forget.
At 1:25 p.m., Captain Robert Schornstheimer, a seasoned pilot with over 8,000 hours under his belt, guided the Royal Hawaiian down the runway.
Did you hear any more about...
First Officer Madeline Tompkins, a qualified and experienced co-pilot, monitored the instruments.
Aloha 243, roger. Circuit breakers.
Checked.
The atmosphere on board was light, mirroring the laid-back island vibe. Flight attendant Clarabelle C.B. Lansing,
Mr. Kiner, welcome.
Always good to see you, C.B. You fixed some good weather for us.
I'm smooth all the way.
a veteran of 37 years known for her warmth and professionalism,
Let me help you with this.
began prepping for beverage service. And as the plane climbed, offering breathtaking views of the beautiful Hawaiian landscape, passengers settled in, expecting a smooth and scenic flight.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached a cruising altitude of 24,000 feet. Flight 243 is on schedule. We'll be landing in Honolulu at approximately 27.
Just as the plane reached its cruising altitude of 24,000 feet, a deafening noise pierced the once peaceful cabin, instantly shattering any sense of normalcy. It was a thunderous crack that reverberated through the air, causing a collective gasp among the passengers. In an instant, the atmosphere shifted from calm to chaos as fear gripped the hearts of those on board.
I saw a brilliant flash of light and boom.
Everything was being sucked out of the plane.
Without warning, oxygen masks descended from the ceiling, a stark reminder of the emergency procedures outlined in safety briefings. Panic spread like wildfire as the aircraft lurched violently, throwing passengers from their seats. A chilling wind rushed through the cabin, whipping hair and clothing in all directions like frantic flags in a storm. The cause of this terrifying ordeal became painfully evident. A large hole had been torn open in the forward upper fuselage of the plane. It was a grim consequence of undetected metal fatigue, an invisible threat lurking beneath the surface until it erupted into a full-blown crisis.
We were in a tremendous blast of wind. The wind blast was unbelievable.
A mass of things just went whoosh out the plane. Hair was up here. Everybody was in their seat, except the stewardesses. I saw the stewardess get smashed down in the aisle. I could see her hair blowing and I could see blood, but that's all I could see of her.
The decompression was explosive, the cabin air rushing out with the force of a hurricane. Debris launched like deadly missiles, inflicting injuries on unsuspecting passengers. The scary scene unfolded in a matter of seconds. Flight attendant Clarabelle C.B. Lansing tragically found herself near the opening and was ejected from the plane. Her screams, if any, were swallowed by the roaring wind. Her fate would forever remain a mystery, with her body never being recovered.
I will take control power.
I can't hear you.
Only seconds have passed since the explosion. The wind noise makes it impossible for the flight crew to communicate.
I can't hear you. Lost pressure.
In the middle of the chaos, Captain Schornstheimer remained remarkably composed. With quick thinking, he initiated a rapid descent to lower altitudes, struggling against the erratic controls of the damaged aircraft. The descent was frightening, with the plane being tossed about by powerful winds that seemed intent on tearing it apart.
Want the gear down? Help us descend?
What?
Want me to try lowering the landing gear?
No, not yet.
Despite the overwhelming circumstances, First Officer Tompkins stepped up admirably.
Aloha 243! Do you read me? Maui Tower, Aloha 243. Maui Tower, Aloha 243.
She kept her cool and maintained communication with air traffic control, relaying their dire situation and assisting with control measures to stabilize the aircraft as much as possible.
Sending out of 11,000. Request clearance into Maui for landing. Request the emergency equipment.
The scene inside the exposed cabin was nothing short of horrifying. Passengers were subjected to freezing temperatures and ferocious winds, their faces etched with fear as they clung to whatever they could find for stability.
The cold and oxygen deprivation are both potentially deadly.
Just imagine the scene up there. The top of the airplane broken off. The passengers don't have any ability to get supplemental oxygen because the critical tubing that feeds that oxygen is now gone. And at 24,000 feet, with very little to breathe up there, the passengers become incapacitated. That's called hypoxia. If you stay up at that altitude for any prolonged period of time, you become more and more physically disabled. With the top of the airplane gone, you now have 300-mile-an-hour winds blowing into that cabin. That's 3 times hurricane-force winds. Those people were dressed for Hawaii in the springtime, not minus 50-degree temperatures. Any period of time at 24,000 feet, and those people will die.
Some gripped their seats with white-knuckled intensity, while others braced themselves against exposed wires and torn insulation. As the plane initiated its rapid descent, hurtling downward at a terrifying speed of 1,200 meters per minute and exceeding 500 kilometers per hour, passengers encountered a new level of panic. Debris obstructed their view of the cockpit, and as the aircraft split apart, the nose dipped precariously by about a meter. With only narrow floor beams holding the plane together, the fuselage began to bend.
The floor was buckling up, and you could tell the plane was bending in the middle,
causing the floor to buckle under the strain. Even though few of us would remain composed in this situation, another hero emerged. Flight attendant Michelle Honda. Despite sustaining a severe head injury, she moved through the chaos with remarkable bravery. And even with her best efforts to reach the cockpit, severed wires prevented communication through the intercom.
Can anyone hear me?
The wires are severed.
As she pushed forward, passengers voiced their most dreaded question.
Do we have a pilot?
I don't know.
Do we have a pilot?
I do not know.
The fear in the cabin was noticeable as uncertainty loomed over their fate. With determination, Michelle Honda attempted to provide reassurance, but her efforts were met with desperation. Cupping her hands to amplify her voice, she asked the unthinkable.
Michelle Honda was coming up and cupping her hands and yelling in everyone's ear individually, "Can you fly a plane?" I was like, what? You know, get out of here. Is the pilot gone too? You know, because you couldn't tell if there was anybody up there.
Can you fly a plane?
The terror of those on board can only be imagined as she asks the one question no airplane passenger wants to hear.
Can you fly a plane?
With undying determination, she traversed the mangled cabin, offering words of reassurance and comfort to the terrified passengers. Her calm presence and soothing voice helped to quell panic and ensure that everyone remained securely strapped in for the terrifying descent. The descent to a safe altitude was a race against time. Every additional minute spent at high altitude threatened further structural failure or engine stalls due to the lack of oxygen.
Any kind of in-flight turbulence, that would have put great stresses on the front end of the airplane, and there's a high probability that the cockpit would have separated from the rest of the fuselage, catastrophic loss of the airplane, and a loss of life.
Honolulu, their original destination, was too far. The closest option, Kahului Airport on Maui, became their only hope. Captain Schornstheimer informed air traffic control of their dire situation, declaring a Mayday the universal distress call that sent shivers down the spines of everyone listening.
At 1:48, 3 minutes after the explosion, the crew make their first voice contact with the ground.
Pressurized. Declaring an emergency.
Aloha 243, say your position.
Paducah, to the east of Makita Point. Descending out of 11,000. Request clearance into Maui for landing. Request the emergency equipment.
On the ground at Kahului Airport, the urgency crackled through the speakers. Emergency crews scrambled into action, a well-rehearsed dance of practice procedures suddenly thrust into a real-life nightmare. Fire trucks, ambulances, and medical personnel formed a line of defense, bracing themselves for the unknown horror about to unfold. As Aloha 243 descended through the remaining 10,000 feet, the situation grew increasingly precarious. One engine sputtered and died due to the lack of oxygen, adding another layer of complexity to the already critical situation. But Captain Schornstheimer, drawing on his years of experience and unwavering determination, persevered. With the damaged plane barely under control, they managed to line up with the runway at Kahului Airport. The landing was far from textbook. The crippled aircraft bounced several times on the runway, each bounce even more sickening, sending shivers down the spines of everyone on board. The damaged landing gear groaned in protest, threatening to give way entirely. Smoke filled from the overheated brakes, a strong smell filling the air and adding to the already suffocating tension. Finally, with a shudder that seemed to hold its breath, the Royal Hawaiian came to a stop. Relief washed over the cabin in a wave so powerful it was almost tangible. The terror wasn't over yet. Emergency crews were still moments away. But the immediate threat of a mid-air disaster had passed. Passengers, shaken and bruised, some even bloodied, unbuckled their seatbelts with trembling hands. The once vibrant cabin was now a scene of devastation, with overhead compartments ripped open, luggage scattered like confetti, and the gaping hole in the fuselage a reminder of the ordeal they had just endured.
In this extraordinary video, captured moments after landing, the amount of damage the airplane suffered is difficult to comprehend. An emergency evacuation of passengers who escaped injury has just been completed. Some injured passengers have still to be helped from the plane. How it flew for those 13 terrifying minutes seems astonishing.
Captain Bob Schornstheimer is then thanked by passengers who just moments earlier had feared the worst. The tension finally eases as everyone realizes they're safe.
Boy, I just said, yes, baby. That's all I said. Pilot did a tremendous job.
I kept touching myself, going, I'm here. I can't believe I'm still alive.
Outside, emergency crews sprang into action without delay. Firefighters quickly aimed their hoses at the smoking brakes, spraying a white mist that mixed with the exhaust fumes. Medics hurried toward the plane, their expressions serious but resolute. The doors of the Royal Hawaiian were thrown open, exposing the wreckage inside. Debris cluttered the aisle, and some passengers remained in their seats, visibly shaken and pale-faced. The evacuation was a carefully coordinated effort. Flight attendants, despite their own injuries, helped guide passengers out of the plane. Some walked unassisted, their faces marked with a mixture of fear and relief. Others needed assistance, their bodies battered by the turbulence or debris. Medics tended to the injured, stabilizing those who needed immediate attention and preparing them for transport to local hospitals. As the injured were tended to, investigators quickly arrived on the scene. The damaged fuselage became the focus, with every piece of debris seen as a potential clue. The National Transportation Safety Board took charge of the investigation and committed to unraveling the mystery behind this devastating incident. It was a careful process that would take time, but the goal was clear: to learn from this experience and prevent a similar tragedy in the future. The investigation ultimately pinpointed the culprit: metal fatigue.
The fuselage of the airplane is actually breathing. It expands and contracts depending on altitude. When it's on the ground, it's in a contracted status. When it's at altitude, 24,000 feet, the fuselage expands. So the airplane is constantly cycling. That's pressurization. That will weaken the structure over a long period of time. And given the history of this airplane being a very high cycle airplane, that probably had something to do with weakening the structure of the fuselage.
Over time, the fuselage of the Royal Hawaiian had developed unseen cracks due to a faulty repair from a previous incident and insufficient maintenance. These cracks, worsened by the strain of pressurization at high altitudes, finally caused a catastrophic failure, resulting in the explosive decompression and the near disaster that unfolded. This incident was not taken lightly. The NTSB's findings triggered a wave of changes in the aviation industry. Stricter regulations were implemented for aircraft maintenance, with a focus on thorough inspections to identify and address potential fatigue cracks before they could escalate into catastrophic events. Improved training procedures for pilots and flight attendants were also put in place, equipping them with the knowledge and skills necessary to handle emergency situations like decompression more effectively. The passengers, too, deserve recognition. They endured unimaginable terror with a remarkable degree of composure. Their stories of resilience in the face of adversity serve as a reminder of the human spirit's ability to overcome even the most harrowing situations. And that is the story of the flight that changed aviation, Aloha Airlines Flight 243. Make sure to catch more videos from our channel like this one being displayed on the screen now. Subscribe and turn on the subscribe button for more documentaries that have never been covered.